Hi, how's it going? This is President. I'm calling with the YouTube back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I'm here to continue my usual on the Dark Patrick and Great Dark Shadows daybook Triumphant. So here we go, episode 576, Dark Shadows soap opera. Liz finds out if dreams really do come true when she believes herself to be buried alive. Elizabeth Collins' daughter, Joan Bennett. Repeat 30 minutes. Liz continues to fixate on death as Angelique bites Jeff and increases her hold on him. Jeff infuriates Vicky by rejecting Roger's offer of a job. Liz has a nightmare of being buried alive. Dark Shadows would die several times. In 576, there's an actual funeral. Can't be all bad because the eulogy is given by the next phase of the franchise. I don't think Joan Bennett was missing any meals, from what I can tell. Dark Shadows was a diversion, yes. But just that, in this section of the series, she's skipping across episodes like a stone on a pond. It's to the point that her appearance are reminders of what the show once was, and that would feel wistful were she not obsessed with death. I think we are supposed to feel as moved as Carolyn, but her conversation is so single-minded that I just want her to get it over with. She's not dead yet. And it's a writing decision of marvelous economy. But the Jason McGuire mystery resolved. There's not a lot for Liz to do, unless they invent some even worse scandal. Maybe she doesn't floss. I don't know. They never reveal it. Instead, they know that a depressed and gloomy Liz is a Liz in her element. So they just put her under a standard issue death obsession spell and call it a series, at least until Angelique goes away again. But it kind of happens once more with the Leviathan, another spell, and Gerard, another spell. In looking it over, did they have any idea that Liz is a precariously hypnotizable matriarch who spends more time miserable than happy? Seeing her now provides a poignant reminder of what the series was designed to be before Jonathan Frid. For some, that's nostalgia. For others, it's a cautionary warning of what the show was and could come again. 576 begins by pulling a fast one. Liz is back, in a good mood, and having a warm talk with Carolyn. Like speaking with any mentally unstable drama queen, it's just a matter of time until things turn dour. And Carolyn and the audience realize they've been suckered in. Her moodiness is an emblematic element of the show at an arguably stagnant time as it lurches from one program Wally to another. Roger's business offer to Jeff, similar to the one that will be given to Jeff as well, stands out as an odd reminder that Roger has a job, a weird reminder of the show's prior focus. It's appropriate that Jeff turns it down. He's too busy with the show's new tone to have time for the old one. There's a dead woman waiting to be reanimated in the basement. Roger, that makes me bring up a question to Patrick when I talk to him next time. And I don't and I just don't have time for threatening pens, master brake cylinders, or your new director of public relations. Besides, I'm a slave to a vampire woman who works directly for Satan. So if you don't mind, I'm kind of busy. Why don't you offer the sales job to Vicky? Oh, I forgot. It's 1968. The episode features a nightmare funeral sequence so archetypal, archetypal that it goes beyond the realm of cliche and strikes an authentically disturbing note. From the discordant music to the dramatic use of scenery and smoke, this is a death sequence both dramatic and strangely classy enough to be worthy of Liz Stoddard. It's a nightmare done correctly. And if you're going to have one, I can see the appeal of this approach. Even the lighting on Liz in the coffin is somewhere between Margaret Hamilton and the woman in the crystal ball of the haunted mansion at Disneyland. Finally, a payoff that dragged the insinuation of a death obsession into the variously wonderful world of color. Welcome, new Dark Shadows. Liz getting it all over with, or Vicky scolding Jeff, is about the extent of agency for women on Dark Shadows. When Julia Hoffman isn't on screen, it's hard to entirely see Angelique as the villain when she shows agency with such moxie and passion. She does that like gangbusters in this episode. And it stands out in literal relief to the party pooping worrywarts of Liz, Carolyn, and Vicky. If you separate the weight, the what and the why from Angelique's actions, and just focus on the passion and confidence, you actually get a marvelous role model. It's as if the series is saying that the well-behaved model for women is meant to worry, fret, and heart to hearts its way into an early grave, while the more passionate agent of violation is literally an undying force, totally beyond the reach of death, supernatural in its power. I know that Angelique is no more a role model than Quentin if you look at most of her actions and their motives. Instead, look at her sprint and her spirit and her belief that she is in charge of her destiny. Taken for granted now, yes, but then compare it to the norm for women on the show. Of course, the dynamic one is positioned as a villain, but metaphorically, to whom is she the baddie? Our show from yesterday, Dark Shadows, remains a show of the future. Episode 598, Dark Shadows Soap Opera. When Adam and Maggie go missing, Willie and Professor Stokes fear how much David really knows. David Hennessy. The appearance of Professor Stokes arouses Carolyn, who wonders further about his connection with Adam. Both are amazed to discover from David that he vanished with a mysterious woman. Meanwhile, a captured Maggie informs Willie, Vicky, that she will go on a hunger strike unless he releases her from the mausoleum. David, on the prowl, releases Maggie from the secret room. An enraged Barnabas blames Willie for intentionally releasing her shortly after Stokes and the manservant experienced the same poltergeist activity they saw the night before during the experiment. Although she may not dominate the running time of the episode, this one belongs to Catherine Lee Scott, who plays Maggie's determination with a sense of relief. She finally gets to do something other than suffer. You can even tell that Scott has geared up her sense of grit from the way in which she narrates the opener. It is a refreshing step in the character's evolution, and evidences a woman who will command the position of Collingwood's resident governess. It also pains me as another example of an actress largely wasted by the entertainment industry. After her stint on the show, although her oncoming time in England split her professional time between continents, it doesn't undercut the sad truth shared with so many for the DS performers. Marvelous parts in the decades to follow simply went to lesser actors. We are lucky to enjoy their work here. The dark, very, very true. Dark Shadows, episode 623, Dark Shadows Soap Opera. What happens when a witch sends a reanimated superwoman back in time to inhabit the body of the 1700s murderess who provided her the spark of life? Anything and more. Ben Stokes, there, David, repeat 30 minutes. In exchange for distracting Nicholas, Angelique sends Eve back in time to 1795. There she visits her old lover Peter Bradford, who awaits execution for killing some guy, but he's innocent. Because he's Peter Bradford, she offers to help him escape, but he refuses. Her plan is to gather evidence to convince Jeff Clark that he's really Peter Bradford. Meanwhile, Joshua orders Ben Stokes to destroy Vicky's book of Holland's history. Eve gets wind of this and hoodwinks Ben into giving it up. Ultimately, she is unsuccessful in rescuing Peter, but she does get a note that he writes minutes before the execution, and she proclaims to be exactly what she needs. This is the kind of thing you could only get away with while the boss is in Tahiti, and yet I have no evidence that Dan Curtis was in Tahiti. In fact, I could just as easily see him giggling like a demented toddler at the city of what the show was doing. Less than a year before, when 1795 began, I'm sure there was a mixture of excitement and were doomed at the ABC offices. Now, what the hell? Let's throw a 1960s soap back to 1795 for a day. Why not? Better yet, why? The answer was simple. Sweeps. It's when the Nielsen ratings really examine the books. Look at November, February, and May, and you'll find shows doing things at their wackiest. In fact, around this time, 1795 was the beginning for the 1967 year. They were doing another 1795 flashback in 1968, with another one coming in December of 1969. Was introducing the Leviathans And in 1970, the events leading to Quentin's witchcraft trial are coming to a severed head in a box. The episode itself is the kind of nutty, observant fun upon which Gordon Russell could always be relied. So often his script felt like parody of The Dark Shadow. That won't quite come out and admit it. The patient lunacy of Peter Bradford being the end-all be-all for both Vicky and bafflingly the most evil woman on earth, Danielle Roget. In Collinsport, from France, by the way, of the Yancey Street Gang, what was the attraction? Who throws a shoe? Honestly, if he has a shot, I do too, and my dance card's open. Ahem, ahem, female Dark Shadow. Then Joshua gets so upset over his inability to avert Peter's death that he orders a valuable book from the future to be burned. I guess it was cathartic. Danielle even tries to seduce the elder Ghoul guard, who just seems weirded out by the whole thing, as if she has an unwholesome fetish with, with which he wants no part. It's a lot of fun and an unofficially sequel to 1795 that makes me wish they'd checked back more frequently. Of course, Jeff Hawks would also be anchored back here, making 1795 the queen mother of all Joan Burns. On this day in 1968, Richard Nixon defeated Washington Beefcake and teen heartthrob Hubert Humphrey to become the 37th President of the United States. In many ways, his administrations would satisfy a conspicuous number of left-wing initiatives for a Republican. If you want a smoking conspiracy gun, it's that. Episode 841, Dark Shadow Soap Opera. A mind-bending trip into inner space leads Petofi to tune in, and prepare a reunion for Barnabas and Julia. That's certain to end in a bang. Aristide, Michael Shirka, repeat 30 minutes. In a failed attempt to use the I Ching to travel through time, Petofi finds himself tortured by gypsy sinners, a giant sword wielding hand, the giant head of Barnabas Collins, and upon waking himself as he attempts self-strangulation with Julia as hostage, he and Aristide lay a trap for the vampire involving a gun arranged to fire. Should he attempt a rescue? He does, and it does. Barnabas vows revenge. As storytelling goes, if looping time travel is ahead of 1897's time, then the events of 841 may be seen as tailored with exquisite precision rather than science fiction. This is Victorian melodrama played with the kind of sincerity that makes the genre work. Julia, tied to a chair with a Rube Goldberg gun ready to go off, and thwart her rescue. Soap operas are the modern evolution of the melodrama, and it's refreshingly honest to see one return to its roots. On the front end of the episode, Tophe's surreal exploration of the I Ching verse, where Tophe is mentally tortured, expanding his character in rounding ways that other DS villains rarely merit. Dark Shadows again manages to tell an epic story. The man faces a gypsy tribal in another dimension without breaking the budget with a clear use of sound, writing, and atmosphere. Just as the show is frequently chiddied for its conservative budget and apexingly tight shooting schedule, those same limitations can lead to bold storytelling choices. If the budget were just a little larger, they'd try to shoot the tribal and probably realize how chintzy it looked. Scrapping it this way, all they have are sound effects, and they use them with great aplomb, creating atmosphere that allows us to focus on Tophe with the reality of his danger always in our minds. It's both intimate and epic, and audiences will see the same strategy used masterfully in I, Claudius. There, David, of course, relishes good storytelling, and his descriptions of Aristide allow him to revel in it. They would be outlandishly purple descriptions if Michael Stroker's oily deployment painstakingly smoked and glazed ham didn't justify it. He is the Z-Man Barzil of 1897, and it freaks me out. Finally, Jonathan Frakes steals two great moments with a swagger, his sense of gentle regret toward Beth when she points out his propensity to force rather than ask is wholly authentic, as his vow to avenge Julia, a moment that could have easily descended into camp, by the way. In my recent fixation on Grayson, I've spent a lot of time defending her stylized performance approach. Still, I look for the moment when things go too far, and I found it. In moments of surprised silence, usually right before a commercial, she kills it until the eyebrows go up. It's not Grayson who goes too far, it's her eyebrows. Watch and learn. On this day in 1969, Wesley Zappa came into the world and was promptly advised not to go where the Huskies go. Wise wisdom. Episode 66, Dark Shadows Soap Opera. When Burke accuses Roger of Bill Malloy's murder, can Vicky prove her employer is innocent? Roger Lewis Edmonds repeat 30 minutes. When Roger and Burke square off, with Burke openly accusing him of driving the car that ended a life, and Burke's freedom. Roger explains that it's all been legally settled, so Burke better have more. He does. He openly accuses Roger of offing Bill Malloy. He says that at the meeting, Malloy was going to pin Sam Evans down, and despite his sweating, thrashing, and protest, make him come clean about Burke's innocence. But as we know, Bill never came at all, and that's thanks to Roger. In speaking with Burke, Roger presents an elaborate alibi that involves time-consuming home paperwork that robbed him of the free time necessary to kill Malloy. He adds that Vicky can corroborate this. Meanwhile, she's busy explaining to Liz that she's in the habit of sending herself letters so that she has mail to open. Roger summons her downstairs to satisfy Burke's alibi curiosity. When she kind of sort of does, Burke leaves in a huff, vowing that he'll be back. Say what you will, Dark Shadows never leaves you wanting for a richness of character exposition. I was about to write that we get yet more of Vicky's sob story related to a masochistic Liz, but that's a flip side. Dark Shadows gives its characters the invaluable gift of time, used wisely by the writers. It allows them to enhance the and reveal the characters with an almost artisanal care, carefully varnishing layer upon layer. When Vicky comments that nothing really happened in her life prior to Conway, Liz has a pained expression that asks all of the right questions and coyly answers none of them. Does she regret it? Is this just part of Conway? Did she know she would be sharing the wealth? Did things only hit the fan when Vicky arrived? Does she feel guilty that Vicky's life was so dull in New York? The episode is one of the great chances to sit and allow Burke and Roger to cross words. When each finally has a sharpened cutlass in his grip, Burke has the moral high ground of truth. Roger pretty much has the situation clicked. So often Roger fights from a position of fear and weakness. And after a while, this makes his contribution to the story a bit shrill and predictable. No longer. Mythologically, the most intriguing element of the episode is Vicky's did meeting the opening narration by acknowledging that she scrupulously writes down everything that happens in following. I love this because it does something real and narratively intrinsic to her introductions, both grounding them in common sense and positioning her as far more aware than we might be moved to believe. Quiet day in the news. Perhaps as a prelude for what I think of as the big story tomorrow. As always, though, you're asking if it were a good day for Chuck McCann. Yes, his cartoon series, Cool McCool, was a full swing, all thanks to his creative talents of Bob Kane. Perhaps relived that with he might finally make a culture statement. Episode 855, Dark Shadow Soap Opera. Beth's loyalties are challenged as Count Pepe begins to transfer his mind into the unwilling body of Quentin Collins. Aristide Michael Stroker. Repeat for every moment. Quentin swoons in and out of consciousness as the ring he wears now makes him susceptible to Count Pepe's mind transfer at the meal. Beth has no idea what's going on, but Aristide hints that it is the most diabolical thing that could happen to a man. Quentin, Dave, wanders over to the Blue Whale, where Pansy Faye is in the doldrums. How does he lift her spirits by playing the only song she knows by piano. Magda tries to warn Beth that Quentin is in danger. Compounded by Aristide's teasing and her own nostalgia, she races to Collinwood to find Quentin unconscious. Man, when Aristide suggests that Count Cook is going to Quentin is the most diabolical thing that could ever happen to a man, a mind penetration is not the first thing that occurs to me. But I'm not sure it occurs to Aristide either. Starting with that, we get one of Dark Shadow's oldest oddest filler episodes. This is enough padding for 10 Schumacher bat suits. And like those bat suits, it has the virtue of at least being perversely amusing. David Selby has gone from playing a menacing phantom to a bipolar drunk, stumbling into bars and perking up the first floozy he sees. And I respect that. We can smell our own yet again. We get a long pour through I Want to Dance with You, leading me to wonder what the audiences of the day might have thought. With the album a recent success, I can only assume that the producers were hungry for a quick repeat of that success. Although it had in various versions, both Selby and Barrett, it was no a visit to a sad planet. And here, Dark Shadows nears a tipping point with which it would wrestle with the rest of its run. If the soundtrack album Dark Shadows knew that its a groovy was a pop phenomenon, yeah, that's the result of a flourishingly timed cocktail of actors, fashions, characters, design, and a million other things, but it goes nowhere without story. Even even Charlie's Angels had a writer to put them in chains. With an episode like 855, most of which feels like another pre-MTV ad for one of their pop songs, the producers clearly veer toward presenting Dark Shadows as a bubblegum phenomenon, needing only a few threats and familiar customers no, costumes to swirl around a song for you to buy and enjoy long after reminded that this was a Dan Curtis production. Think the song is too sappy? Not when the number one hit single is Sugar Sugar by the Archies. The show would try to make up for this precarious self-judgment with occasionally superb storytelling. But was it too late? On this day in 1969, the trial of anti-war activists, the Chicago Eight, began, certainly one of the wackier trials of the year. Episode 908, Dark Shadow Sofa. Mano a mano at Collinwood, Roger takes heated issue when he comes home to find that Paul Stoddard has entered without his consent, while he personally demands satisfaction, or will he personally demand satisfaction or ask for seconds? Paul Stoddard, Dennis Patrick. Repeat 30 minutes. Alex initiates himself at Collinwood, giving new orders to Liz and keeping everyone well on task. Meanwhile, new guest, Paul Stoddard, knows he's up to no good and tries to recruit Maggie to help him. Roger arrives, shocked that Paul is being allowed to stay. Paul, thinking he's chasing Alex out of his bedroom, instead encounters the breathing sound of a fully revealed Leviathan. It's impossible to watch this episode and not think of the omen. Somewhere, Harvey Bernhard was taking notes. He just had to be. At the center is Alex, the new incarnation of the Jeb Spawn, played here by 8-year-old David J. Jay had a modestly active career as a child actor, but went on to other things as an adult because I remembered his performance in a troubling light. He was the chief reason I was dreading the episode. Well, either memory failed me or my tastes have changed, and it's a little too tempting to pick on child actors, as poor Jake Lloyd can attest. Is his Carnegie Deli cheesecake thick regional accent arguably becoming for the Antichrist? Maybe, but when Marie Wallace is your foster mom, you're going to pick up an accent. In retrospect, while it can be seen as absurd, it also gives him a cold-hearted toughness that a Tennessee twang couldn't match. Maybe we're better off. Jay pulls off his main challenge, and that's shifting from little boy to a strange, intimidating man in the space of a breath. When he gets down to the business of castigating Liz and demanding radius and portrait albums, he projects a confidence that raises above his ears. Goofy looking, yes. Icy and disturbing, yes. Especially in that way kids can be. I have always found young children to be disquieting and unpredictable. This episode captures the spirit of why. As a counterbalance, we see David and Roger at their warmest, and the precision of the involved relationship has made the past 3 years worthwhile and gives the heroes one more thing to fuel their fight. Another camp in this one is Catherine Lee Scott, who has to believe Paul as he's in a paranoid frenzy. She plays kindness and honest doubt with a wonderfully subterfuge that should not go unpraised. On this day in 1969, Time magazine unrolled an issue with an abstract statue of Raquel Welch to promote Mara Breckenridge. I, however, have no issue with a statue of Raquel Welch. Dark Shadows, episode 951. What's got fangs, a taste for booze, and a mild case of pyromania? Barnabas Collins. Jonathan Frid, repeat 30 minutes. Barnabas, retransformed by the Leviathan into a vampire, and after nearly biting Maggie, attacks one of their newly minted cultists, and then burns the Todd's antique shop to cinders with Jeb inside. Jeb made a mistake, and this is why we watch Dark Shadows. Yes, it's a profound meditation, mediation on love and the past and the existential conundrum of culpability versus intent. And we just as much want to see Barnabas down to bite. And this episode is a hullabaloo, perhaps extending into the real realm of hootenanny. Barnabas appears at all corners of the moral map in the series, from sinister to savior. but he's generally a linear progression. Out of step with this, the Leviathan's arc depiction of him is incredibly merciful, and no matter how we see him improve, they still play the monster pedal, but even within the arc, there's a progression. Until there isn't, rarely has the series had it both ways. With such an elegance efficiency here, in 951, he's a full and ferocious vampire and a tragic hero all at once. Cosmically, I blame and credit David Selby. Now that there's another central hero to the series, Barnabas can be the bad guy. But since we've seen him go from bad guy to good guy once, and now his tragic origin, it's just not, it just won't stick with him be completely evil. That's a job for Nicholas Blair. 951 reestablishes precarious balance that's essential to the character, and it does it theatrically as hell in an episode that's determined to entertain the audience, whether they want to only see a boring soap or not. Turning Barnabas back into a vampire is fine. Having him attacked by a bat that comes out of a demonic box in the furry realm of a snake god temple, that's great television, and maybe great art too. Strike the maybe. There's a dizzying amount of variety that follows Barnabas. Has a one-man vulnerable routine outside Collingwood, where he decides to bite Maggie, talks himself out of it, then back into it, then back out of it as he nears the door. I'm vaguely surprised they didn't let Quentin and Jeb have the rest of the episode so they could cut back to Barnabas seesawing on the issue for the next 10 minutes. But it's all too much, and he needs a drink. At the Blue Whale, just as he's courting a conspicuous Dixie Doxy who's wandered in front of a important food-written episode of True Blood, Julia and Quentin show up at the Blue Whale, and Barnabas tries to ditch them. For good reason. Not only is he a terrifying vampire, he's killing cultists who are also permanently Southern, and who join snake cults via guys named Bruno, which makes them even more suspect. Oh, early, Quentin and Jeb get into yet another fight, which Jeb wins by threatening to injure Quentin's suit. Since Quentin's immortal, I assume that's the danger posed by the knife. At this point, those boys fight more than Sonny Corleone. Jeb and Quentin either need to duel to the death or get married, but Jeb had better do it quickly because Barnabas has had it. Torching Megan and Philip's shop is a true Sopranos moment, and it speaks to my favorite part of Barnabas. The one with a gas can and match, it's a strikingly direct solution that rarely speaks of the no-nonsense aristocrat from 1795. OG patriarch got stuff to do. Thank you, and it has unique ways of solving problems. Since it's through indulging those beatnik and antique peddlers and their shaggy-haired Messiah stock boy, mess with the hegemony, feel the horns, my friend. You sometimes think of aristocrats of Barnabas' time as fey and inofficial, fancy lads, but they had their staff ravage and savage entire continents before breakfast. They are many dualists and discontinuities to Barnabas Collins. My favorite is when he crosses the line between timidly and to hell with it. Usually involves fire, like when he goes back in time on a mission off to the side. Angelique seemingly lies about saving Vicky from the gallows, and Barnabas and Ben simply shrug and douse her in flames as a response. You can tell it's therapeutic. Same thing here. Has been dragged dragged through time, saw Josette commit suicide, had to stop using Just for Men, and his templates was manipulated by threats through Josette's ghost, and now is a vampire again. Then there's the whole Sky Rumson business and taking orders from Michael and Alexandra. I'm amazed that this is all he does. There are a few things as satisfying as fed-up Barnabas Collins declaring war upon Jeb and Oliver Leviathan. But Barnabas doing all these sins while committing arson is right up there. Episode 969, Dark Shadow Soap Opera. It's wedding bells for Carolyn and Jeb, while Barnabas discovers the parallel universe may exist in the East Wing. Carolyn, Nancy Barrett, repeat 30 minutes. Although Carolyn always expected a grand wedding, she realizes that all she wants now is Jeb. They marry in the drawing room with Liz and witnesses and a reverend who looks like John Tesh. Jeb flaunts convention by refusing to name where they go or for how long. They'll be away. In reality, he was escaping Angelique's shadow curse. Sky Rumson visits Barnabas, angry that he is now the vampire slave of Megan, through this, Barnabas learns that she is sleeping somewhere in the East Wing of Collinwood. He instructs Julie to keep working on Megan's cure while he searches for her resting place. Meanwhile, Jeb is increasingly paranoid about his shadow as he leaves with Carolyn. In the East Wing, Barnabas discovers an occupied room that should be as empty as the rest of the area. Instead, he finds Elizabeth and Hoffman, now a maid, arguing about whether or not the room should be prepared for the new mistress or it should remain the property of its owner. It's clear the owner is dead, but Hoffman insists she will return. The room shifts and is suddenly abandoned. He has gained his first glimpse of parallel time. For a show that could move at a pokey pace, Dark Shadows moves breathlessly when it decides and this episode is painting for Jeb. Things are just a matter of time, and in some ways waiting for the end is strange. Cruelty is both him and Carolyn during the wedding. I was struck that it was a rare appearance of a Christian clergyman who wasn't trying to kill someone. They cut away during the actual vows, but I just imagined what was going on a cosmic level. As Jeb took his vows to the Judeo-Christian God, for one thing, what strange bedfellows. What brought us to this? A shishka too many, the most potent and forbidden power in the universe. She alone trustingly brought down the Leviathan. So many mothers pointing were correct. But beyond that, it really is a bullhorn reading reading of the riddle of Antiquity. You'd imagine that the Leviathan Messiah, pledging himself in the love to a God of the Bible, would be shielded from shadow assassin. No, I would have thought that God might have protected him, if only for bragging rights. Sorry, Jeb. Yes, somewhere Christopher Hitchens is looking up and smiling, I guess. We also glimpse parallel time. With this, more than anything, I can feel Dark Shadows growing full circle to where we were when I began nearly a year ago. The scars of PT are fresh enough that I can still recall how profoundly disappointing and time consuming it truly is as a storyline. This is the first place where I feel like a breath of creativity was seeping from the balloons. Yes, yes, I know you have a movie to make. But if ever the rules of, well, anything didn't apply, it's now. What would you have done with PT? In her fanfic, Adria, Adriana Penna looked at her dark, fascist politics. I would have sent Barnabas into a world of vampires, where humans had both the ultimate prize and a day-walking threat. I can hear knuckleheads in the peanut gallery clearing their throats to tell me why that wouldn't have worked, but I have a newsflash. Neither in is what's here. Dark Shadows has few cheerleaders, more authentic, athletic than I. Still, I am not its Dr. Angelus. I also dread it a bit because I know this is where Don Briscoe made his final exit for the 70s. Behind the scenes at DS, all were gearing up to shoot House of Dark Shadows about 23 days out. As I see it, also, Guinea became a republic, and a Catholic Church thumbed its nose at convention and upstart revolutionaries that they are allowed women to give out the host at worship ceremony. It's all too much for me to handle. All right, guys, I'm going to stop right there. I'll read some more later tonight because I'm going to do 2 videos tonight. But that is more of chapter 5 for you guys. You guys have a good day.